Magical Monaco, the race around the Principality, which, if pitched today, would be laughed out the room. It certainly divides opinion. Some say it should be off the calendar, and some saying it should remain. I find myself in the latter camp. I love the history, and seeing F1 cars flying through the streets will never not be spectacular. That being said, you may notice this video is a bit shorter than the rest, so let's just get into it. If you enjoyed the video, then give it a like. If you wish to see more, then subscribe. This is Mostly Racing, my name is Nick, and this is race number 634, the 1999 Monaco Grand Prix.
He put his hand out of the cockpit to acknowledge the yellow flags. That's a bit of a trick Mick has got of saying I'm not going to slow down, but I have seen you. Look, he still didn't get the front into Raskas. He still lost a lot of time through there. Did he have enough in his pocket to take the pole position? I think he could just creep on the front row of the grid with this. What does Hakkinen do?
Yes, Mika Hakkinen goes into pole position.
Four straight pole positions for Mick Hakkinen, but this time he really had to fight for it, edging out the prancing horse of Michael Schumacher. This of course means that for the first time in 1999 there was no McLaren front row lockout, as Coulthard was down in a lowly, distant third place. The Scotsman was joined by Irvine on the second row, so it was the usual suspects at the front. Best of the rest was once again Barrichello and Frentzen, 5th and 6th, in what feels like the most vanilla grid of the season. Some notable performances were that of the Williams pair, as a struggling Zanardi managed to qualify 11th and half a second faster than his teammate Ralf Schumacher, down in 16th. Damon Hill in the Jordan was behind the German in 17th, as his poor season continued. McLaren had only converted one pole into a win so far, so can they make it two? Let's find out.
They're all in position. One light, 2, 3, 4, 5. Go, 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 go. And Hakkinen pulls across. Schumacher gets right up alongside him as they go. Schumacher leads. Schumacher, an absolutely sensational start by Michael Schumacher. Gets him ahead of Mika Hakkinen. Has got ahead of David Coulthard, so it is Ferrari, McLaren.
It's like you're playing the F1 game and you've got the difficulty too low for qualifying, so you turn up the hardness, but you overcompensate and struggle in the race. Heroics from Schumacher and Irvine going into Saint-Devote meant both Ferraris passed a McLaren each, giving us a lap 1 order of Schumacher, Hakkinen, Irvine, Coulthard, Barrichello and Frentzen. I got too much wheel spin from the start, and Michael was able to accelerate over the first bend in front of me, the Finn stated after the race. No big movers in the field, and all 22 starters were still running, which is nice. I can't be bothered to work out how often 0 DNFs happen in the first lap at Monaco, but hopefully editing Nick will have done the work for me. The 100% running rate didn't last long, however. On lap 4, Damon Hill attempted to lick the stamp and send it going into the Nouvelle chicane, but ended up with a paper cut on his tongue, if we're to continue with this metaphor. Far too ambitious in other words, and the resulting contact with the Williams of Ralf Schumacher put the 96 world champion out of the race. I'll let you know for free, behind the scenes Damon Hill was becoming increasingly frustrated and disillusioned at the sport, something to keep an eye on for the coming races. At the front, things were fairly static. We've already seen the difficulty of on-track battles at wider, faster circuits. So at Monaco, you're not making a pass unless the driver ahead has a problem or makes a mistake. Strategy was pretty straightforward too. Track position is king, so middle of the race one stopper was the only way to go. At the back of the field, yes I'm padding, Luca Badoa was running 18th, and because his gearbox wanted a relaxing Sunday afternoon off, it gave up on lap 11, making him the second retirement of the race, and teammate Genet would make it 3 cars out in a more impactful way, as in he impacted into the Saint-Devote Armco barrier. Meanwhile, Schumacher was pulling a considerable gap to Hakkinen, who had Irvine lurking in his mirrors. Not quite Senna Mansell levels, but close enough to be putting pressure onto the reigning champion.
Fresh rumour mill that's been turning over this week that David Coulthard may also be replaced next year by Greg Moore out of the American racing season. So,
if you know, you know. Smoking is bad for your health, kids, and it's also bad for Mercedes engines, even if they are encased in a pre-advertising banned cigarette box. Coulthard in 4th was the unlucky bearer of the fuming V10, although his pace didn't seem too affected. It's not something that will fill you with confidence though. Jumping ahead, we reached the midpoint of the race. As with Imola leading into his second stop, Schumacher had pulled a massive lead over the field, breaking the lap record on consecutive laps. Hakkinen in second was struggling, not only to keep up with the Ferrari ahead, but also to keep the Ferrari behind at bay. Coulthard was also managing to pull closer to his teammate. In the midfield, poor old Johnny Herbert, running 11th, showed some brilliant car control as he managed to keep his Stewart with bent suspension out of the wall. Adding to the excitement, there was even an overtake.
Those back markers that cost... Oh, here we go.
Oh,
that was a
wow.
nice move from Lacey. And was it a Lacey coming through there? Yes, it was. A Lacey coming through.
In a Monaco race, it doesn't get much better than that. I still like it, so shush, you clicked on the video. Back at the front, Irvine continued to pressure Hakkinen, with Coulthard close in tow. That changed when the inevitable happened. The Scotsman's engine gave up the ghost, and he retired for the third time in 4 races. Yet again, reliability of the Mercedes engine was the arrow McLaren's knee. Meanwhile, Irvine in third made his stop on lap 37, and much like Imola, the Ferrari pit stop was curious. Just 6.7 seconds of fuel. Perhaps the Northern Irishman was now on a high-pace 2-stopper in an attempt to get ahead of Hakkinen. Certainly seemed like he could be going much faster without the McLaren rear wing in his face. It makes sense, a high-speed circuit like Imola, but Monaco? That's a bit of a long shot. Well, that's the thing. Everything that could go wrong for the Woking outfit had been Everything that could go wrong for the Woking outfit had been happening in the opening races, and fate was looking unfavourably upon them once again. Tora Takagi had an engine blowout going into the Mirabeau, and you wouldn't believe who slid on his oil.
Out of the escape road down into Mirabeau, no problem there. Keeps the engine running, selects first and on his way, but he's just given effectively Eddie Irvine a free pit stop and, more importantly, Michael Schumacher a free pit stop.
Suddenly Irvine was on the tail of Hakkinen again, with the Finn needing to pit imminently. Lap 42, Michael Schumacher makes his one and only stop. No dramas, no pressure, and the German came out the pits with the best part of a half-minute lead over Hakkinen and Irvine. Lap 50 and Hakkinen makes a stop, and finally Eddie Irvine has a clear track ahead of him and could now run at his own pace. He would still need to make another stop, which he did on lap 56.
Irvine is out in front of the McLaren, yes he is indeed, so Irvine keeps track position.
That Ferrari pace was simply unmatchable at Monaco. In those 6 extra laps, Irvine came out 3.5 seconds ahead of Hakkinen, and surely that's our podium set. This is Monaco of course, and by this late stage of the race, driver fatigue would really be kicking in, as demonstrated by Ralf Schumacher. In a very strange turn of events, on lap 67 of 78, Hakkinen out of nowhere sets the fastest lap of the race. He was in a sprint for second place and decides to show his hand now? Very strange. Perhaps he wasn't feeling confident in the car, and only managed to get a feel for it just then, who's to say. The only remaining battle of interest was that for P5 between Barrichello and Fisichella. Second place for the best of the rest if you will, with Frentzen clear of both of them in 4th, continuing his impressive season with Jordan.
Never mind the closing laps, but you have to say, whoa, bang, 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 and that is Barrichello.
I think that's the last part of the second part of the swim, but we heard the skid marks long before the car, didn't we? And that's Barrichello. I think he's dropped it out of the fast part of the swimming pool and finally had his accident. Yeah, there he goes, off the curb, loses the back end, took too much curb, pushing too hard. Young Fisichella behind him there, putting him under pressure. Barrichello trying to pull away, having...
And that was honestly the last thing of interest to happen in the race, so over to Murray for the finish.
He's going to stretch his lead in the World Championship with a 4th victory at Monaco, 1994, 1995, 1997, and victory for Schumacher and Ferrari in 1999. Superb!
Superb indeed. That win was the 35th of Schumacher's career, but also his 16th for Ferrari, the most of any driver in history up to that point. He won the race half a minute ahead of Irvine and Hakkinen, while Frentzen managed to finish on the leading lap. Benetton would have been fairly content with their double points finish, Fisichella 5th and Wirtz 6th, the Austrians' first point of the season. Villeneuve failed to finish the race after suffering an oil leak on lap 33. Don't know if I'm being harsh, but I'd give the race 4 out of 10. Things did liven up in the pit stops, but yeah, Monaco race. Driver of the day, undoubtedly Michael Schumacher. Schumacher now had an 8-point lead over teammate Irvine, who in turn had a 4-point lead over Hakkinen. 4 straight poles for the Finn, but just 14 points to show for it. That's an appalling return. In the Teams Championship, Ferrari now had more than double the points of McLaren, who had Jordan snapping at their heels. Thanks to their double points finish, Benetton moved into 4th with 8 points. The next race, the Spanish Grand Prix, and I'll see you then. Thank you for watching. Mostly Racing is a solo endeavour by yours truly, so if you're willing and able, please head over to my Patreon page. You can follow my Twitter, where I sometimes upload the tables and graphs I make, but I mainly just post my nonsense to the world. Thank you again, and I'll see you next Sunday.